Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Willow, Season 1, or the show, the show that's on Disney+. This follow-up sequel show to the Willow movie, now on Disney+, is a lot of fun. This is more in the fun adventure thing. I don't really watch House of Dragons, and I haven't really seen anything with Rings of Power. So I can't really compare this to that. It seemed like Disney wanted a fantasy property, and I think decided on this because they paid a lot for Lucasfilm and wanted to use the other property that was after Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And I guess Twice Upon a Time wasn't good enough. They went to this, which is great because I grew up loving Willow. And I look at this show as a great follow-up, not just because it continues the fun and the adventure and the kind of great, going on a journey and discovering yourselves thing that I think Willow was, as a movie really good. I think this discovers it more, but this is not trying to be the Willow movie at all, even though it has the same title. I wish it had a subtitle or something that's confusing, but I don't understand that. This is a completely different quest from the original one. They'll reference things because this takes place after it, but you could watch this standalone, frankly. And I really actually like that about it because it felt like another adventure in the same world. It didn't feel like, well, it's another adventure in the same world, but we're going to recapture some steps. So basically, it doesn't feel like Force Awakens. It feels like they learned, hey, we could do that once. We're not going to try to do that with Willow. Instead of, it's sort of a reverse. Instead of saving someone from a bad evil, this time they're rescuing someone from a bad evil, but there's a lot more people, and it's a lot about the legacy and what the world is after the first film, but it is not, I would say, how most of these legaquel, whatever they are, movies are, where they really acknowledge the structure and try to emulate the previous film. This didn't feel like that. It felt like you were getting the vibe and the tone of the original, but was not trying to just recreate the structure, which I have to say I really, really liked about it. It felt like I was watching really just another story in the same world, not how these are always supposed to be told. I like that Willow is not pretentious about it. The Willow show is about basically Mad Mardigan and Queen Sorsha have two twin children, and the son is kidnapped, and so the daughter, her girlfriend, who is also a Night Guard person, the brother's girlfriend, Willow, and Boromin, because why not, also the guy who the sister is engaged to, all go off to try to save him, and the rest is basically a quest, I'd say. That's how it is. The group is actually really good. They are kind of like this weird group together, and it takes a while. I think it really highlights, I do think the original Willow kind of worked in almost Marvel comics, not the movies, but the comics used to work in the Fantastic Four, where they'd be arguing half the time, and you're constantly wondering, is this all going to fall apart? And you sort of get that vibe, which I liked, but it also was more personality driven, which was more of the Lucasfilm of the 80s rather than what happened in the 90s and so forth. This felt like, what I'm watching is something like the original. It was based on Val Kilmer's personality, Warwick Davis's. It's a well-cast film, and this is a well-cast show. Warwick Davis is just as good as he ever was as Willow. You have everyone from Ellie Bamber, who, I guess, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, so I guess if you were going to watch this, didn't want to be spoiled. But it's revealed in the first episode, and I was actually kind of surprised. Ellie Bamber basically plays Laura Dannon. I think it was cool having, Willow he's training Laura Dannon. He was reluctant before sort of going through I guess similar to the Mark Hamill in Last Jedi. But he has good reasons, at least. He had a vision. There are similarities, I guess, but he handles it better, let's say. Ruby Cruz as Princess Kit. She is really great, and I want to say her and Dempsey Reich, both, they're so well cast because I reviewed and I watched the original Willow film, and they act like and look like you'd expect the children of Mad Mardigan to be. I was honestly this is remarkable how perfectly cast these kids are, and how well they played. Similar to Mad Mardigan, they're not playing Mad Mardigan, and no one really is. There's sort of in this, but you can tell that is their father. It's good job, because that was immediately what I thought when I saw both of them, particularly Ruby Cruz. Erin Kellerman, who plays Jade, I've never seen her better than this. A lot of people gave performances that, like, I don't think I've seen a lot of these people in stuff other than Warwick Davis, and everybody just, like, very charismatic, played off of each other well. Amar Chadha Patel, who plays Borman, I think is close to, he's not Matt Mardigan, but he's that kind of rogue swordsman kind of thing, and he was great as this, as well as Tony Rifalari, who we've seen in, like, the Spider-Man movies. I thought was good. Everybody in the main group who was on all this adventure did a really good job and really, really played off of each other, and had like almost everyone had an arc and a major thing they had to go through throughout this one. Jonathan Kasny worked on this. He has a real love for this. I didn't really object to anything. I think there's a major gay romance that I didn't really have a problem with. I think the original Willow, especially when I watched it this time, you can see it takes on traditional masculine roles, particularly with raising children, and two women having a relationship kind of actually fits in with the franchise. It, like, totally makes sense if you really want to break it down. So it, to me, it, like, didn't feel unnatural. It felt like pretty normal. There are some basic changes where they have, like, modern pop music in the credit sequences and a few other places, rather than kind of this, like, James Newton Howard score. Although he did music in this, it's really not the same, but they are totally going for a different vibe. I liked it, but I sort of prefer the score in the original film. I think that works for the whole mystical thing. Overall, I was, swept away by it. I think the best episode is towards the end, where they're going through, like, this endless kind of sea, and the horizon line is really low, and they just all look really cool and amazing in that entire episode. That was very well shot. I had a lot of fun with this. It was a good old adventure yarn as a TV show. I don't honestly think there was too much complexity other than, like, Warwick Davis is great. I really liked all these actors. It shows a real love for the material and love for kind of like a classic fun adventure thing to save the world. I didn't love that, like, even though the production design is very good on this show, it's not doing the production design of the original, and also they're not really going into the horror elements of the original, which I kind of like. In some ways, when I really think about it, it feels more sanitized. When I'm watching it, I don't think about it, and it's not really an issue. I will say the original was more like a mixture of fantasy and samurai, and this seems to just be a fantasy thing. Like, the elements that were samurai influenced in the original are back, like Sorcerer's Sword, things of that nature. But other than that, and even the new stuff didn't have that in there, I found that to be actually pretty embarrassing, like, that they just sort of disregarded that, because I thought that was one of the cooler things about it, is it's not like you look at Kale's armor, you look at things like that, it doesn't feel like straight, like, armor, like a fantasy thing. It feels, a different spin on it, and in that they, like, let that opportunity sort of lapse, I thought was a major mistake. I don't know why they did that the way it was. But overall, I really liked it. Like, I liked watching. It was a fun show to watch. It was a fun show to watch that, like, each one felt like we were building on something, building on the relationships and stuff. It didn't, I guess the immediacy didn't work, because it didn't feel like everyone in the world was talking about it. I know it did well, and that's why I was, like, confused about it. Is this it? Is it not? But it's just a good old fantasy yarn. I don't want to, like, go on and on about every episode necessarily or something like that, but I thought this, I think, compiled itself very well into being, like, this epic fantasy journey. I think sometimes we need those epic fantasy journeys, and it felt like this group sort of needed it all to come together. And it's nice as, like, you're watching it as sort of escapism. The character, which you need, I think escapism is important, but these characters just need this quest to be whole as people, and maybe that's sort of what we look at escapism for. And much like when I was a little kid and watching something like, this is an amazing fantasy world that I'm in, I get to be inside this fantasy world. And this, it felt like almost like you wanted to go into that fantasy world, you wanted to see how things changed, but it wasn't trying to be the same at all, while also kind of comforting you in a warm blanket the way, like, a good adventure does. So it's almost like progressive in the nicest way. I noticed there's not too much backlash. There is some from some people, but I don't think they really understood Willow in itself. I think the people who made this did understand how to put their own stamp on it and make their own story, and I think that's, like, what Willow should be. Maybe there should have been more Willows. I know there are the sequel books that apparently influenced the show and stuff. I hope there are more seasons and more to do in the Willow-averse. I hope they have a better name than just Willow, of course. But this is a really solid, good adventure show. I noticed the reviews are like, very high percentage wise, and just like use a bunch of adjectives and descriptive words and things like that. And that's kind of how the show is. You leave and you're like, I like this character. I like what he's doing here. I had fun with this. I had fun with that. But maybe there's not a ton of ideas other than like the idea of like being thrown into something, going on a quest or something like that. But I do feel like it maybe hits your brain a little more frivolously, and it maybe an adventure. Going on a great adventure is, but I feel like there's more. I feel like the fun of this makes you feel like when you're watching as viewer, there's something more there. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I missed something entirely. But being there and being in that world and sort of like both transported back, but open to something new, it's a really interesting experience being with Willow. And I do agree it is one of the better Disney Plus shows I've seen in a little bit. And I would say also probably one of the better Lucasfilm follow-ups, because it very much is its own thing all throughout, while at least having Warwick David there to acknowledge and get into your nostalgia. And I think in a lot of ways it like casts a spell on you and gets you into both the nostalgia of your past, but also the now of what that world is. And maybe you should get more into the now of what this world is outside of Willow, even though Willow, I guess, is your escape from it. But I think it's sort of a beautiful escape, coming back to the world of Willow and remembering all these things and thinking about how when a sword and a wand were all you needed to save the world. And Willow kind of, makes you believe, in a sense, maybe you could again, even if it is a fantasy. It's a hell of a nice one to believe in. So if you've seen Willow and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.